Right, and that is where we left off, which is nowhere. We did nothing. Now, to get it started, the first thing I will want you all to do is get a little used with Blender. And a great way to do it is to learn shortcuts. And if you're an absolute beginner in Blender and you've done no tutorial, you've done nothing, I would recommend you to go to BlenderGuru's tutorial, and he usually has a PDF shortcut. I'll have the link in the description for you to go there and check it out. It's one of the best documents out there. Honestly, you will just have kind of all the useful shortcuts that you will use. Now, in Blender, the first thing you have to know is how to add objects. Now, you can either do it by pressing the Add button here, and then you'll have the mesh, the curves, the surfaces, metables. As you can see, I never really use it. That's how I know it so well. Some volumes if you really want, whatever. You can add a lot of things, that's the point. But you can also add them with Shift plus A. And it's going to bring you the same menu, only wherever you have your mouse, basically. So let's just add a monkey. And this is the famous Suzanne, as you can see also here. Okay, now another thing you have to learn is kind of how to move it. And to move something in Blender, you'll press G, and then you can just move it around. You can also press the axis you want. Now you can see the axis up here, and you have Z, Y, and X. And if you press X on your keyboard, you will move Suzanne only on the X-axis. Now if you press G and then Y, you go with it only in the Y direction. If you press G and Z, it's only on the vertical direction. Now another way to use it is if, for example, I press G and then press Shift Z, as you can see, the X and Y axes are highlighted. And that's because you can only move it horizontally, basically. Actually, it's not just horizontally, but you kind of got a point. You cannot move it on the Z-axis whatsoever. And that's a good thing when you kind of want to keep everything to a level. And yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, guys, so just intervening. It's me from the future here. So if you have this cube, right, there's no need for the snap to be on. When you move it, you press G, then B, and you select the base point, whatever you want. For example, this corner here, right? So the moment I will put this cube on the plane, that base point will be at on the exact face of the plane. So there's no clipping, there's no distance between it, it's perfectly on its surface. You're welcome. You can also press 1 on your keyboard, on the numpad, by the way. If you try to press 1 from your keyboard, it's not really going to work. And by the way, so going into Edit, to Preferences, you will go to Input. And here you can have the Emulate Numpad and Emulate 3D Button Mouse. Now, the Emulate Numpad will help you with the numbers from the keyboard. So if you only have those numbers on your keyboard, those will take the place of the numpad numbers. The Emulate 3D Mouse button is if you're only using the mousepad from your laptop, and this will basically let you basically emulate a mouse, but trust me, it's very annoying. And I think a mouse is pretty cheap, and I think you should invest in a mouse if you want to do Blender. Also, a point of advice for any beginners, really. I'm kind of a beginner myself, This was the meme, wasn't it? That was the I'm kind of a scientist myself. Um, but I'm kind of a beginner in Blender. I mean, I kind of do this for just a year. So this is one of the most interesting things because I think this way we can see each other evolve basically and get more involved as a community and kind of learn from each other. So yeah, by the way, if you wanna like this video, I would really, really appreciate it. And I will definitely appreciate any comment that will tell me that I can do something better or that I should do something differently. Or if you like this kind of content, if you would like something else, I don't know. I would just appreciate if you guys leave me a feedback because I kind of want to learn how to do this. Um, Now, the advice that I keep trying to want to give is if you're a beginner and you don't know if you really want to continue do this even as a hobby, uh, I personally would advise you not to invest any money into it. At least for like a month, you should just kind of try and see if you enjoy it and if you can stick around with it. Because again, Blender is a very complex program. It's easy to kind of get lost into. And if you keep following tutorial after tutorial after tutorial, you'll get bored and you might just give up. And if you invest a lot of money, you most probably will regret it. So I personally think you shouldn't do that. You should kind of just, you know, um, just play around with it, see if you like it or not. And at the end, basically, um, after like at the end of a month, is what I'm saying. You should think about investing into some maybe equipment or maybe some add-ons, like paid add-ons to help you out. Um, and I would say it helps a lot if you have a goal in mind. For example, my end goal is to become a game dev. And for that, Blender was my go-to because I love doing 3D modeling. And nowadays I learn how to sculpt and how to create characters, and I love that part as well. But I just wanted to know as much as possible about Blender before really going into the game development itself, which again, hopefully I'm going to be able to present you guys and show the development of that. And we learn how to add objects and how to move objects around and how to scale objects. So uh, again, if you don't really understand them, you should take a little bit of time and I don't know, just add some objects, move them around, play stuff, just play around with things. It's what I'm saying. Now, you might want to be able to copy an object and you keep pressing Ctrl C and nothing really happens when you press Ctrl V. Well, except it does happen, but it's not exactly the correct way. Um, well, it is and it's not really, because in Blender, the way you do it is not copying the object, it's duplicating the object. And that is done by pressing Shift D, and then if you press X or you just move it around, you have a duplicate. Now also, you can, as you can see, you have the duplicate object, and you can just move it around, say that they're linked or not. I'm gonna explain exactly what that is. Have the mirror edited or the proportional edited. It's just you can do a lot of things with it basically. Now, as I said, you have the Shift D option, but you also have the Alt D option, which I mean seemingly does the same thing in the beginning. So you might ask yourself, what's the difference really? I mean, yeah, so we have an Alt D and a Shift D one. What do we do? Now, what happens is when you go into edit mode and as you can see in the left corner. To go into edit mode, you press on an object and then press tab. And then you can see the vertices that form the body. Also, up here, you can see the select mode. Now you can either select vertices, you can select edges, and then you select only the edges, or you can select the faces. And to do this, you can press 1, 2, or 3, but this time on the keyboard, not on the numpad. So there's the difference for you of why you don't use the keyboard ones or why you will use the numpad ones. Now, if you press 1 on keyboard outside the edit mode, right now it's not going to show anything. Not that I hit this and press 1 again, nothing happens. Well, I thought it's going to help. I have to cut that. Now, as I was saying, out of the edit mode, if you have a new collection, let's say I have this here, I hit it and then press 1, it's going to unhide the collection. I'm really sorry if my English teacher sees this. She probably doesn't, but yeah, it was just a mistake, I swear. Anyway, now that we have these three objects, basically, I'm going to show you the difference between the Shift D and the Alt D. Now, this one, remember, it's the Shift D, and actually I'm going to call it that way. Shift D, well, plus D here, and then Alt plus D. And trust me, it's a pretty important reason, and that's why I'm trying to explain this to you. Now, if I modify this, so I just select a vertex, and then press G to move it, and then Z to move it on the Z-axis. As you can see, this cube is modified. However, the other two are the same. Now, if I do the exact same thing to this one, now here's what happens. I modified that duplicate, and however, the original also changed. And that's the big difference. When you Alt-D an object, which is basically duplicated, you will have them linked. So basically, the reason this is important is because, first of all, it's a good way to save memory on your objects, because your computer basically will not have to think about each object individually, because it basically will take its information from only one object, like this cube right here will give all the information needed about both of them. However, this one is going to be a separate object with its separate information, basically. So the computer will compute it separately. And the good thing, of course, is if you want different objects in the scene and you want differences. Now, these differences don't necessarily mean scale, because, for example, I can scale this one, which again is the duplicate, and it's not changing this one. However, if, for example, I make this bigger and then I Control A, now Control A is basically applying allocation, rotation, scale, all of them. And why you will want this really is, well, first of all, mostly for scale. And that's because when you will do things further from here, like, I don't know, beveling objects or subdividing them, or I don't know, maybe texturing them or unwrapping them. If you don't apply the scale, which I'm going to show you right away, right here, the scale right now is kind of messed up. right? Like it knows it was changed, basically. And if you press Ctrl A and then apply the scale, now this scale is the, let's call it the normal scale. You will always basically want your scale to be 1 for everything. That means the scale was applied. Now, if we try to apply the scale on the small one, it's not going to let you. And the reason for that is because you have the same object, basically, with different scales. And if you will apply it to one, it should affect the other, but it can't. So the way it would do it, it's basically to create a different object. So now this is separate. It's on its own. It's not linked to this anymore. It doesn't matter. Now, if, for example, let's say you will alt the an object and I don't know, halfway through you will think, hey, I don't want this anymore. Like I don't want this to be linked to this original one. I need it to be, separate. And you just don't want to apply the scale just to make this happen, right? What you will do is select the object, go to object, go to relations, and you can just make it a single user. And here you can just have the object and data, object, data, and materials. Because a linked duplicate, it's going to have more than just the geometry affected. It's going to also have the material affected. So for example, if we add a new material here, and we're going to make it a dark red, we should also go here, by the way, you will see the different views. So you have the wireframe mode, right? Which it lets you easier to see basically the wireframe of each object, and it's especially useful when you edit them. It's just easier. And I'm going to show you what this button here, the X-ray, does. You also have the solid mode, which you've seen so far. You can have the material preview, basically, which is pretty cool. It shows you the materials, but it shows them to you in in real time, which is also, by the way, the render engine that comes by default, which is Eevee. And then you have the render mode, which basically will show you the whole render again in real time. And the reason it looks like this is because we have no light whatsoever. So if you just have light here, increase the power, there it is. Now again, this is in Eevee, and this is why it looks pretty close to the material preview. If you go to cycles, and we change this to GPU to move a little faster, now granted, cycle moves way slower, but it's also way more accurate. If you see the shadows and the lighting, it's so much better in cycles. I will kind of explain later on the differences between Eevee and cycles. For now, we're going to mostly work in Eevee, sorry. But at the render, we'll probably um, do a separate part, because I kind of want people that maybe don't have beefy computers or laptops or whatever to be able to render this in Eevee as well. So this being said, I hope you understood these basic parts. This is kind of it for the first part. Okay, so thank you very much for watching until the end. I hope you stuck till the end at least. Um, so I know this is moving a little slow right now, but this is because I try to do this from like a beginner perspective. from someone that never touched a 3D tool before to hopefully an intermediate level. All right, so thank you again for watching. I hope I'll see you in the next video where we'll actually start to model for real the train. And yeah, please leave a like, give a share to this video. It would really mean a lot to me. And a comment, of course. Tell me what I do wrong, what could I do better, and what do you expect to see in the next videos. Bye, guys, and thank you very much.